Farhan, we can start the session.
All right. Thank you so much, Anil. I'll take it from here. So first
Yes.
of all, welcome all of you. Let me just share my screen. I hope my PPT is visible. Is my PPT
Yes, it is
visible?
visible.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Please do feel free to pitch in. You can ask any questions. Just cut me off. You can ask questions during the course of the session. Let's make it a little more interactive. To start off, can anyone tell me what is research methodology or what have you heard about it? Or maybe some people may have written research papers. Just give me a small idea. I mean, anyone, just unmute yourself. You can speak.
I suppose it's the procedure or the the techniques that you use to conduct your research before you write a paper.
Right. Legal research methodology is everything you need to do from scratch till the end of your research. So, first of all, this is usually the response when I take a session. I think I can see all of you on screen, and most of your faces look like this. So, just be a little more cheerful. Also, I recollect one of the judgments which was being passed by Chief Justice Rituraj Ashwati at the Karnataka High Court day before yesterday, and he said, "मुस्कुराइए आप बैंगलोर में हैं." So I would say, "मुस्कुराइए आप इस session में हैं." So let us start with the phases of legal research in India. The most important concepts being, why do we do legal research? We do legal research because we have to, involve it in a study of law, and we understand the principles which are involved in it. In legal research, what happens is the information is gathered by the researcher. So every person who does a legal researcher is called who does legal research is called a researcher. And basically, you find out loopholes in existing laws during the course of the research. Let us get into the sources of legal research. So basically, there are legal sources and there are non-legal sources. So in legal sources, you have primary authority of law, that is cases, statutes, regulations, code. These are just basic stuff. Maybe you would take the Constitution of India, that is the primary sources of law. Secondary sources may be reports, journals, legal treaties. You can also include case commentaries, digests as well. Non-legal sources include systems of law, practice of law, normative character, etc. So basically, non-legal sources are the sources which you derive from the society. So when you say the system of values, it means that you're talking about the values which exist in the society and how you go about with it. Of course, you can also include customs as a part of this. So, types of research. There are two types of research basically: doctrinal research and non-doctrinal research. Doctrinal research is when the researcher is trying to rely on pre-recorded information. So when you're just going up to the internet and you're like, let me search for existing information, let me try and think about it, and then I'm going to conduct the legal research. You open your book, you open the Constitution of India, then you refer some other online material on based on constitutional law. That means you are doing a doctrinal research. You're limiting your scope to just to the books and the internet or your library. While you go to non-doctrinal research, you go to the field, you collect information from people, you deal with people in real life. So let me take an example. If you are conducting a research on the head load workers are basically hamals, which one may say. So when you are going to the field, asking them questions about their life, like how much do you earn, what is your monthly income, how is your family surviving, and everything. This is a non-doctrinal research. So you can use several methods such as questionnaires, schedules, interviews. Also, you can conduct interviews of people and report it as a case study as well. So, of course, let me point out some differences with doctrinal research. Obviously, because you're relying on internet information, you can just at the tip of your fingers you get access to these material these days. So easily
नेट
accessible,
गलती से भी
more
बंद मत कर
reliable.
देना.
It's less time consuming and
ठीक है.
it is less expensive because obviously you do not have to travel anywhere to get your content. Also, it allows the researcher to get choose from a variety of topics. Obviously, a lot of the disadvantages are it may be outdated. Obviously, it lacks originality because many people have already written on it. There may be errors committed by the author because when you try and inherit something which has already been written and that person has committed an error, you tend to commit the same error continuously. The researcher obviously lacks individual perspective because you're looking at someone else's research paper and writing it. So you lack your own perspective, but then uh, there are times when you have your individual perspective. So it completely depends on the type of research and the researcher itself. In non-doctrinal research, you obviously have access to the latest developments. When you're going and asking a person and getting first-hand information, it is obviously more authentic, and you get the latest idea of what is actually going on at the moment. Obviously, it is time consuming because you have to go to the place. Also, non-doctrinal research may also cover, maybe let us imagine that you're sitting at the Karnataka High Court and you're observing the proceedings, and you're trying to point out how many cases are the judgments are being delivered on a day. So all this is a part of non-doctrinal research. Obviously, the possibility of error commission will be less because you will be doing it yourself. The respondent or the subject of the study. So many a times it happens that the respondents are not willing to, because if you go and ask a random person, to give an interview, he may or may not give an interview. So it depends completely. Also, if I'm going a little too fast, please let me know. All right, there is a lot to cover in 2 hours, so I may tend to go a little fast. So apart from that, let us get into the stages of legal research. So this is the whole, I told you that you're supposed to start from scratch and go till the end. Okay, the start is the research problem, the end is the report writing. So research problem is basically the question which you have. So you open up the constitutional law book and you are trying to understand what are the loopholes I can find. So you study different aspects on it and then you finally come out with something. So that will be your research problem, and this research problem you will use to explore different aspects of it. So I will just be going through the 7 steps in detail starting from now. Till here, any questions, please do let me know. Okay. So let me start off with a research problem. So the research problem is basically your topic which you're choosing and you want to, investigate further into this aspect. So while you are framing your research problem, obviously this research problem, many a times it happens that students, tend to go ahead with researching on different aspects and they're not able to jot down to the research problem. So I suggest that all of you just narrow down to 3 topics and just conduct it in that area. After that, choose one of these 3 topics. Please do not create a list of 20, 25 topics and try to choose one from it. It becomes very difficult. Apart from that, in a research problem you must have clarity. The research problem must not be vague or ambiguous. Obviously, when I say it must not be vague or ambiguous, it means that it must be capable of being tested. So I told you about non-doctrinal research, right, wherein you are going and asking a person, maybe just take it as a laborer. You want to understand in labor law how that labor is being treated and everything. So you must be able to gather information in such a manner that that can be analyzed and reported. The approach must be, specific to that particular area. It must be definite and precise in nature, which means that you must identify what is the exact area of law you are trying to get into. It must be practicable, which is again the same thing. So sources of research problems. So while you are, trying to find a research problem for yourself, these are some of the ways you can think of research problems. It happens so that, when you're reading newspapers, articles, and etc. So you may get some random idea that this may have a loophole, this laws may not exist in such a sphere, etc. So it can come from existing literature, existing social realities. So if you can see the aspect of marital rape in India, marital rape is not yet talked about in a lot of laws in India. So I think that is where social realities comes into the picture. Apart from that, personal experiences of the researchers. So there may sometimes be first-hand experiences of researchers who have faced ill treatment, etc. So it can come from personal experiences, maybe sexual harassment of women at workplaces, at schools, colleges, etc. brainstorming session with peers. Maybe you sit with your friends, you sit with other interns in this session, and then you brainstorm. Okay, what is a good idea? Okay, then you have consultation with experts. So say you go on to get into the sphere of intellectual property. You call up an advocate who is dealing with intellectual property rights. So when you are consulting with that expert as to what is a good area, what is an emerging area, so this is consultation of expert. These are the ways you can identify a research problem for yourself. Let me get into the types of research problems now. So before starting, obviously, sometimes it is very hard for you to have specific scope, but some people are able to identify that specificity. So there'll be a focused research problem and an unfocused research problem. In focused research problem, you know very precisely what you want to carry out your research under, and you just want to get into that aspect completely. So let's say the employment rate of rural women in the state of Karnataka. So this is a complete focused research problem because you are telling that you're talking about the employment rate, you're talking about rural women, you're specifying the area which you are confined to. Also, it is very important that you understand that you know the area in which you are confined to, because you cannot generally say that you want to conduct research throughout India unless you are telling that you are using the sampling method, which I'll come to in the further course of this session. Unfocused research problems, where the research problem obviously does not completely indicate what you're trying to do. For example, problems relating to women. I just talked about marital rape in India. So maybe you're just keeping an unfocused research problem at the moment, trying to explore further to finally come out with your focused research problem. So unfocused research problem on a long term gets converted to a focused research problem. So this completes your first stage of legal research, which is the framing of a research problem. Okay. The
Excuse me,
second,
sir.
yeah, please tell me.
Sir, we can take more than one research problem in one research paper, sir.
You can take more than one. No, you cannot take more than one research problem, but you can combine several attributes or several concepts and fix it into a research problem. In a research paper, only one research problem exists, in which you may have several objectives which you want to cover. Got it?
Okay, sir.
I will talk about the different aspects of how you can relate several concepts together. Okay, in the further course of this session. So moving on to the second stage, the review of literature. Review of literature. What do you think is a review of literature? Anybody? I mean, just let's just make it more interactive. I don't want it to be a lecture.
Uh, a review of literature can be when you educate yourself on your research topic by reading previously collected data, previously written research papers, previously published articles about the topic.
Exactly, exactly. So when the researcher is trying to understand what has already been explored in the market, what already exists. So, you may go on Google Scholar, you may go on several legal researching websites like Manupatra, SEC Online, and you try and understand that these are the content which have already been written on the topic, and these are already written material which may or may not be of use to me. So in review of literature, you jot down these points and these articles. You put them separately in a document to try and cover further aspects. Okay, so this covers your review of literature. Obviously, many people neglect the review of literature because they feel it's not important. But I feel that review of literature is the most important part of everything. I've seen people who have done review of literature for over a month. So I think review of literature is very important. Please do not start writing your research paper before doing a complete literature review. Okay. So next step is the framing of a hypothesis. So I already told you what a research problem is. Okay. So when you try to test that research problem, you can come out with several variances. Okay. A hypothesis is a tentative statement which the researcher wants to prove during the course of his uh, research paper. Okay. So let me just give you an example. I spoke about the wages of rural women in the state of Karnataka. So if you say that the rural wages of rural women in the state of Karnataka is very less, you are choosing one of the two options, that It can be very less or it can be very high. And if you're saying it's very less, you try and prove it throughout the course of your research paper. Any doubt on this? On how to frame a hypothesis? You want me to elaborate anything else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. Uh, was that a question or you want me to elaborate?
Yes, sir. I want to elaborate this
All right,
hypothesis.
all right. So let me get into the types of hypotheses to make you understand this better, okay? So there is univariable and multivariable hypothesis, okay? So like I said that, there are two, you can have, I already told you this, that you can have a single factor or multiple factors. So let us say we are talking about the wages of rural women in Karnataka, and we are also talking about the laws that exist for them. So if you try and understand, there are two factors which I'm including here, which makes it multivariable. But if I just spoke about the wages of rural women in Karnataka, that makes it a single factor. So further going on to the same thing, you can try to associate these two things, or you can try to non-associate these two things. Okay. So one thing is you're talking about the wages of rural women in Karnataka. The other one is you're talking about the laws that exist for the rural women in the state of Karnataka. So when you're trying to relate the wages and the laws, you're trying to tell that this is associational. Okay. So maybe you say that the laws that govern the state of women, the wages of women in the state of Karnataka is not adequate. So you're trying to associate both these variables into one research problem or a hypothesis. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Also, you can also have universal or statistical, hypotheses. So something which is universal is, I may or may not agree to this, but women are hardworking compared to others. Statistical means, based on some statistics, you can find out that salaried men are honest taxpayers. Any doubts still here, or I can move on to the next part? All right. Moving on to the sources of hypotheses. So you can have hypotheses from theories. Theories are obviously, supposed ideas which have been explained and, tested and explained from a long period of time, and it exists since time immemorial. Also, you can have hypotheses from general interaction with peers. You just, take out your research problem, you talk to your peers about it, कि, ऐसा हो सकता है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है, and all that. And you finally come out with a concept that, like I already said, the wages of, rural women in Karnataka is low. So you speak to someone in your university or something, and then that person believes that, the wages of rural women in Karnataka is high. So after, a couple of deliberations, you come out with a different thing. Before you were saying it's low, now you will say it's high. So now you can set that hypothesis to high and go ahead. You can also consult with experts on the field. Okay. Let us say you talk to someone from the International Justice Mission who's talking about who has worked, in the state of Karnataka and understood the complete aspect of rural women. So you talk to him and say and ask him, sir, what do you think about the state of rural women in Karnataka? Are they being, paid very less wages? Are they being paid very high wages? So as per his opinion, you set your hypotheses in order to try and prove it. Okay. Then you go ahead with the personal experiences of the researcher. Maybe you see that people around you are earning less wages or something, and then you just assume it to be so, and you try and prove it throughout the course of your research paper. Okay. So it is very important to frame a hypothesis which is capable of being tested, because if you cannot test it, you cannot analyze it. If you cannot analyze it, you cannot write a research report. The researcher must possess clarity. Okay. I told you about the two variables which exist. Let us use this example throughout for now. uh, you have the laws that exist for the rural women, you also have the wages. So you have to understand what is the kind of relationship you are trying to establish between two variables. Until and unless you cannot establish these two aspects, you cannot go ahead. Since the hypothesis is the starting point of research, you must possess clarity. Okay. And this is again a previous point. So importance of hypothesis is, it helps you focus on this aspect of research, and it is the starting point of research. So if you're talking about the wages of rural women, you tend to not go into the other aspects of, rural women in Karnataka. You don't think about what other benefits they are getting from the government. You don't think about other aspects. So in order to focus your research, you need to have a proper hypothesis which you want to try and prove.
Sir, could you go back to the previous page for a second?
Yeah, tell.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can go to the next one.
Yes, sir, that's fine.
All right. Meanwhile, I'll just share another slide with you so that you can understand this better. So while you are, trying and setting your research problem and your hypothesis, you're also required to set out some objectives what you want to do. Okay. So maybe you want to explore the exploitation of labor and injustices meted out to these workers. You want to understand how the regulation of employment is being done, and you also want to determine wage rates and check if they are being paid according to the laws which exist for them. Okay, so you need to set out objectives. I would suggest all of you that you set out at least one objective, but not more than three. Okay, objectives must look something like this, and it is an important part. Okay, let me just see the hypothesis in this research paper as well. So headload, the hypothesis which was assumed before the start of this research paper is also just telling you that headload workers are these coolie workers. You may see at the railway station, you may see at kirana shops, they have rice bags on their head and carry that. Okay, so headload workers is just that concept which has been explored throughout the course of this research paper. I'll be referring to this research paper to explain you some concepts as well. So headload workers are subject to injustices during the course of their employment. What kinds of injustices? You can, maybe say specific injustices, maybe about their salary, maybe about their ill treatment of, not being paid according to wage rates. Then the next hypothesis is the employment of headload workers is not being regulated. Okay, so there were two, there can be two aspects of this. Is being regulated can be a thought, but in this research, the researcher thought that it would his idea is that the employment of research of headload workers is not being regulated. The headload workers are not being paid according to the minimum wages prescribed for them. So these are the hypotheses which the researcher has started with before going ahead with this research paper. Okay, so let me get back to this. So research design. Anyone has any idea about what a research design is? Anyone? No? All right. So research design is basically how you want to carry out your research. It is that plan of action, how you want to collect your data. So this comes after you have chosen your hypotheses and after, after you have particularly set your topic in mind that this is what I want to do. Okay. After that, you try and make a plan of action. This is, and these are the questions you have to keep in mind. Okay. So what is the purpose of the study? You will obviously, have a deep idea about it by now because you've already done your literature review, you have already framed your hypothesis and everything. And to do this research, what information must be collected? Okay, and for in furtherance of this question, you should understand how the information must be collected. So if you're doing a doctrinal research, you are trying to go to your library, you will read the several books, say SK Ahuja and everything. So and if you're doing a field research, so you will you will tell that you will go to the several let us go back to the examples of headload workers. So in this research design, the selection of the study area has been done. The researcher has conducted it in different markets and factories in the city of Bengaluru. Okay, this research is limited to the city of Bangalore, and all this research design has completely said that where all the researcher has to visit in order to collect the information, from where and whom the information must be collected. Okay, so let us say we are talking about the headload workers. So obviously the headload, from the headload workers you will collect the information. From where, I think it's already specified in the research design that you will be collecting this information on the field, maybe at the railway station, etc. What material must be studied and how many cases must be collected. So if you're working on some constitutional law cases, and you want to carry out a research on those cases, you must try and understand that, let me take up 5 cases, try and correlate it and go ahead. How the information must be processed or analyzed. So you must understand that if you're taking an interview method, you can try and put it in form of a case study. If you're taking a questionnaire, you should, analyze the questionnaire in several aspects. What technique can be used for collecting information? So again, coming back to the same thing, technique is you can, in doctrinal research, you can refer the internet, or if you're doing a field research, you will be going on the field. Any questions here? Okay, I'm moving on to the next part. Steps or procedure of research design. Researcher must identify the nature and type of research. Then you must identify the sources of information. I think I gave you a small gist of what can be the sources. That is the primary and secondary. What did primary include? It included the case studies, statutes, commentaries, and everything. Secondary sources may be values in the society, etc. The researcher must gain clarity on the object and purpose of his study. Okay, let's just take this very different example. Let's not stick to law. So if the research paper is titled Life on Mars, a few observer objectives can be: is there life on Mars? Is it primitive or complex form of life? Will it still evolve and establish interaction with human beings? Okay, very simple example, obviously not related to law. The geographic area, like you saw in this research paper, the geographic area is Bangalore. So it's very important that you identify your geographic area in order to carry out your research. Otherwise, it will be a very, unfocused research. The time period that the research will consume must be estimated. So let's say now you are interning with us. You have like 2 weeks to complete the research. You may obviously not be able to do, a non-doctrinal research because you may not be have so much time to go on field and try to collect the data and everything. But obviously, feel free to ask us if you want to take some more time to submit your research paper. Techniques for data collection. What techniques you want to use? Basically, obviously, which I talked about: questionnaires, interviews, schedule methods, etc. The information must be capable of being tested. This capable of being tested is a very important aspect, and it must be kept in mind throughout your research. Okay. Once sufficient, once sufficient relevant and information is collected, you can go ahead to arrive at conclusions and identify them. Got it? Any questions still there? All right. Going on to the types of research design. Okay. You can have exploratory type, explanatory type, and diagnostic. Okay. In exploratory type, you want to, as a researcher, you want to get an insight into a new topic which you have not worked upon. Like I already told about that topic, marital rape in India. You don't have much idea of what laws exist, with in relation to marital rape in India, but you want to gain an insight into what are the several laws which can exist in it. So you have very little or no knowledge about it. So this is an exploratory type of a study which you as the researcher will conduct. And then explanatory study, also known as a descriptive study. So if you're trying to, get into several detailed aspects of your study. So let's go back to the same thing: marital rape in India. Let us let us think that you will, completely cover all the aspects of it, not leaving everything. That then it is an exploratory study. Diagnostic is you are trying to, we saw two variables before. You are trying to diagnose two variables in relation to each other. Okay. Any questions on this? Sometimes people tend to confuse this. No questions? Okay, moving ahead. So the importance of research design is that you obviously, get a proper plan of action, and you are focused on your study, and it saves your time and energy because you are already having that, proper plan of action, what needs to be done, what time it needs to be done, and the complete details. Any questions still here, or I will move on to the fifth step, that is the data collection.
Just a small thing. So,
Yeah.
will the abstract before the start of the research paper can include objectives or the questions that you have raised, or even as a matter of fact, do we even need to include questions in say a critical analysis of a particular topic that is like a focused research area?
Yeah, so it completely depends on the researcher. Many times, researchers do not prefer to have several objectives as well. They just want to stick to one thing. Also, abstract is completely a different ball game. I think the concept of abstract has come in very lately, wherein people are, trying to write one abstract for the conference which is coming up, and then they try to write the research paper on it. I personally believe that this was not a practice when initially research was being done. The abstract is done after your research paper is complete and you have, complete and intensive amount of data of the whole idea. The abstract is just a 150 to 200 word small document in which you are trying and explaining what is there in the whole research paper, which you want to present before in the national or international conference which is coming up. Okay, so I suggest that when you are ever writing an abstract, write an abstract after completing the whole research paper. Please do not write it before, because many a times it happens so that you write an abstract and you try to portray it as something, but when you're actually trying to do the research, it comes out very differently. Got it? Any follow-up questions to that question?
No, thank you.
Yeah,
So I have a different question.
yeah.
Do we disclose what type of paper we're writing in the paper? Like, do we have to say that this is explanatory or exploratory,
So
or
it's usually not required, but no harm in actually including that. Also, I will just show you this research paper, research report, I may say, and
Mhm.
the research report which has been written also in form of a research paper. Okay, after its completion, also I will show you. So I think you will get a complete idea in that aspect.
All right.
Yeah. Any more questions before I move ahead?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, moving on, let us get into the data collection processes. Okay. So, data collection, I personally believe that these two are the most important aspects of data collection. Okay. Can be a census method, there can be a sampling method. Okay. Let us talk about the laborers that exist in India. So, if you're trying to write a research paper on labor law and you're telling that the laborers in India are not being paid enough wages, okay, and you take one person from each state, okay, let us say one person from Karnataka, one person from Kerala, one person from uh, Manipur, one person from say Delhi. So here you are taking a census method, sorry, sampling method. You are taking just one specific unit from several aspects of the universe, okay. In census method, have you ever heard of census, generally collecting information from whole of the country? Maybe you would have seen this in the COVID census, wherein how many number of people have been vaccinated shows in the census. So census is the complete universe. So obviously, let me explain you this concept of universe first. So universe is, for a researcher, universe is the complete subject of the research. Okay. So if I am studying about the laborers, okay, let me get back to the headload workers. So if I study about the headload workers in the city of Bengaluru, all the headload workers in the city of Bengaluru are my universe. Okay. And if I am taking an interview of all the headload workers in the city of Bangalore, that means I'm using the census method. If I'm, jotting down just 20 people out of all the headload workers in Bangalore, then I'm sampling 20 people out of all the existing people who are headload workers. Any questions with this? Obviously you can use census method and sampling method. Usually people stick on to sampling method because it's much more easier, convenient, because census method takes a lot of time to study, because the number of respondents will be huge unless you are just taking responses from your own study group or anything of that sort. So basically, like I already mentioned, the census method is used when the area covered to be small. Let us say you are taking the research from just 60 students who are in your university. So that time you can use census method. Let's say, when you are electing a class representative from among 60 people in your class, you ask each and everyone's opinion. Then you're using census method. Obviously, the opinion in each and everyone is necessary when you're electing the class representative. Okay. Census method is usually used to collect sensitive and important information. Like I already mentioned, if the government is trying to collect data of how many people have been vaccinated, it is obviously an important information and it is also sensitive. Okay. The advantages of using census method is you are collecting information from every part of the universe. Then the information is obviously important and required. It is like I already said, it is time consuming, expensive, not possible to collect information throughout the census method, and it requires training for the researchers, because many researchers may not be well equipped in order to conduct such kind of research. Moving on to the sampling method. Sampling method is obviously used when census method cannot be used. Okay. So how to pick a sample? A sample can only be picked if all the units of the universe are homogeneous. Let me give you the example as the same thing of your, let us take, there are two classes in your university. In order to elect the class representative of your own class, you can ask only the 60 people who exist in your class. Okay, you cannot ask the 60 people who exist in the other class. So which means that you can ask only homogeneous units of your universe to give responses for your research. A sample may be picked from the universe only when it is capable of being capable of representing the other units. So when I say there are two classes and in your class 60 people are there, the your class representative cannot be elected by the people from other class, because your class representative cannot represent them, right? So when is the sampling method used? Obviously, when census method cannot be used, when the universe is homogeneous. Okay. So one more aspect is the sample method can be used only when the universe is homogeneous. You cannot, combine. Let us say you're looking at some laborers and you are also looking at professional workers. So you cannot combine these two and say that I took responses from 20, head load workers, but I will not take, responses from professional workers. But the responses from the head load workers can also be applicable to the professional workers, because it does not represent them. You cannot do that. When the time required is limited, obviously you have a limited period of time right now, so you will obviously have to stick on to a sampling type of method. When accuracy is required, most times sampling method is used, because when you take a large amount of data, let's say 1 lakh 21,122 people have got their vaccinations done as of today. The accuracy is not there, and apart from that, when you are using it statistically and you are trying to number them, it's very difficult to deal with numbers. Okay, these are the types of sampling. Obviously, I'll share this with you. If you have any doubts with this type of sampling, you can. Okay, let me just explain this two types, and then we can go ahead. So, probability sampling is wherein you are creating a probability that these people can be selected. Okay, non-probability sampling is you are just selecting out of your own friends group or anything of that sort. Probability is you are let us say there are 60 people in your class. Let's say you are taking five people's opinion and you're selecting every fifth person. Okay, every fifth person. So there is a procedure of how you're selecting it. So there is a probability of how you're selecting it. But if you say that for the class representative election, I will just choose five of my friends and tell them to elect me. So there is a non-probability sampling, and obviously there is a capability of uh, not getting the proper data which is required. So finally, coming to when you are supposed to stop researching. Okay, this is going back to the initial parts of the legal research, wherein you are trying to frame your research problem. So if you see that you're not able to find anything, you must look into other sources of law. You must reconsider the issue. You must reconsider the legal theory which has been proposed. Okay, so all these aspects you need to look into if you are not able to carry out proper research. Then you also have several findings. So you have so many responses that you are not able to find out what you can use, what you cannot use a research paper. So that time also you should stop, take a step back, try and understand what you should actually do from this point of time, and replan your research design. Okay, and when there is a dearth of time, let's say you have another 15 days to write your research paper. You do 13 days of literature review, and then you just have 2 days and you're panicking that I have to write my research paper. I have to write my research paper. That time you just should stop, take a step back, try and analyze what you have already collected, and then go ahead with writing the research paper. Any doubts still here, or I'll move on to the next topic? Okay, I think there are no doubts. Let us get into the analysis of data. To understand this aspect better, I'll just use the same study. So like I already showed you the study design used in this. Okay, let me just get back to the contents of how this research report has been written. There's an acknowledgement, there is an introduction in which there is a research problem, there has been a review of literature done in which the objectives and hypotheses have been specified, there has been a research design, and the methodology has also been stated in this unit. Then you are coming to the sixth step. You are analyzing the data. Then you are also writing further collected information. Then you are giving recommendations and conclusions, and you are adding annexures which may or may not be required. Okay. So currently I'm talking about the analysis of data. Just before going to the analysis of data, I'll get into the collection of such data before analyzing them. Okay. So this was the questionnaire which was used in order to question the head load workers and analyze this data. You must, while you are framing your research design, you must make such a research questionnaire to, go and ask your responses or your universe. So let's see, name of the respondent. You can ask sex, age, caste, religion, etc. Then you are asking if they have, all these cards which have been made, any issues or treatment, livelihood, how many hours they work in a day, which is very important to understand the, time of work allowed. Then the time period of breaks, which is also specified in labor laws. Then you ask them if they receive their wages on time, when do they receive their wages, how much do they earn, how they spend out their expenses. Then you also, very important aspect is, please write down these details, because it's very important, while you are writing your research report, because many a times you will not understand where you collected something, where you are trying to, when you're trying to fit it between the lines. So you write your date of visit, when you visited that place. Maybe try and, when you're interviewing, try and create a recording of the same. I do have recordings of this questionnaire when I've asked people these questions. So try and create a recording of it, so that, you may even present it while you're, presenting it in a national or an international conference. Got it? Any questions with respect to this questionnaire, or, any questions you have here? Also, this is not the only method which can be used to collect data. Let us So in this, research paper, I also had one more aspect in which I interviewed. So these are the head load workers who I have directly interviewed, but I have also interviewed the president of the trade unions of the head load workers. Okay. So I want descriptive answers from the president of these trade unions. So I made two parts of how I want to ask the questions to these presidents. Okay. So I wanted to build up an initial rapport with them. Then I wanted to understand what is their, trade union about. I wanted to understand several aspects of it. What annual programs do they conduct? And finally, I'm coming to the points which I actually wanted to understand. Okay. I wanted to understand that, what are the actual laws applicable to them, which is the Karnataka Shops and Commercial Establishments Act. And I also further wanted to understand whether this act is just enough for it, or is it not. Okay. Also, one more aspect I wanted to question them on is, there exists some, separate laws in the state of Maharashtra and Kerala, which specifically relates to these workmen. Okay. So in Maharashtra, such an act exists to regulate the head load workers, and in Kerala, the Kerala Head Load Workers Act also exists. But in Karnataka, it is just covered under the Karnataka Shops and Commercial Establishments Act. So to try and understand that whether only this act is enough, or do we need such an act which can be, termed as the Karnataka Head Load Workers Act, of whichever year which it may come into existence. I've actually drafted a new act by the combination of state of Kerala and Maharashtra, which may be required to be implemented in the state of Karnataka. All right. So any questions there, or I'll move on to the analysis of data. So to try and analyze the data, you can put it down into tables and graphs to finally come out, to write a proper research paper. Okay. The research paper at the end, after publishing in an ISBN form, looks like this. Okay. So here in the tables and graphs, you are taking the names of the respondents. So this is completely based on the questionnaire which you already saw. Okay. Did you just see the name of the respondents was mentioned? There was the sex, age groups, category. So SC, SC, OBC, which they were from. Religions, which is Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, which was asked in the questionnaire as well. So let us just take this religion aspect and say there were 20 respondents involved in this interview. 10 of them are following Hinduism, 9 follow Islam, and only 1 professes Christianity. Okay. So you try and point it out in several aspects, as it may be understandable for you and for the person seeing the research report. Then you are trying to understand how many people's native place is Bangalore. Then you see that several people have come from several parts of north, several parts of other parts of Karnataka, and also some people from Tamil Nadu. Okay, then when have they come to Bangalore? If they were not, people or natives of Bangalore who are the six respondents, then I try and understand what all, cards they hold. Let's say voter ID cards, DLs, Aadhaar cards, etc. Then we go on to the size of their family, which they are trying to maintain. Let us say there are 12 people in their family, and they are just the only breadwinner in their family. So in this aspect also was tried to which we tried to understand by the course of this research. Then let us understand how many people have been educated. So out of the 20 people, 5 of them have gone to their school in their early life, but they have not received further education. So their qualifications were also studied in this. Their health issues, what all health issues are they facing, and what is their exact health issue, which has been specified in the questionnaire. Then how they treat themselves. So 8 prefer in the private hospital because the treatments are better and it gets done quicker. 12 prefer government hospitals because they are cheaper, and obviously it's up to them. Family dependency. So if you see the blue aspect, most of them in this research are breadwinners in their family, which means that they are earning or the sole earning member of their family. Then we are going to the place of their resident. Most of them live in a rented place in Bangalore to carry out their work. From when have they started their profession as a head load worker? Several aspects of it. Then how many hours they put in a day. This aspect is to understand that the Karnataka Shops and Commercial Establishments Act does not allow you to work more than 8 hours in a day, excluding 1 hour of extra time for which you will have to be paid additional sum. So in this, several aspects of hours in a day are tried to understand. Break times, which are all mentioned. Any questions here, or I can go ahead with the next topic, or you want me to explain further?
Go ahead, sir.
I'll go to the next topic.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I just showed you how you analyze the data. You take your questionnaire, you put it in form of tables, you put it in form of graphs, then you try and understand that this is what is actually happening in the society. Obviously, I have chosen a very quantitative type of research because I want you to understand how this works in real life. Because if I would show you a doctrinal research wherein data is just collected from the books or internet, it would not be very much understood. So here was the analysis of data which has been presented. Let us finally move on to the report writing. Okay. So while you are writing a research report, just jot down this information in a separate aspect. Try and understand what all you need. Introduction, research. So first of all, research report is different from a research paper. Okay, research paper is just a gist of everything which you have included. So this research report is of say 56 pages, but this research paper is just of 5 pages. Okay, so when you are narrowing your research report down to 5 pages, you just include what is the exact relevancy. Okay. So obviously many of them do not write research reports in legal research papers because it's not very much required and nobody impresses upon it, except there are these policy and research centers where these are actually required and important. Research fellows, research associates at national law schools use this kind of methods, right? So I will move on as to how you should actually write your research paper. So you go on with the introduction, you write about the review of literature which you have done. Obviously, headings need not be same. Headings literally depend on the researcher and what type of research they want to conduct. You can have your own headings. You can have different aspects of what you want to write on. Okay. But I would preferably suggest that you write your research problems separately because it's very well, looked in depth. So the unregulated employment of, I hope you can see the paper completely. Yeah, so the unregulated employment of the migrant headload workers in the city of Bangalore and the injustices meted out to them. All right. Then I have also included the study design and methodology. Also, it is very important to write the objectives. Okay, hypotheses if not mentioned, it's all right. Please do write your objectives in your research paper. It would be very nice for a person who's reading it to understand your objectives separately. I would really suggest you use pointers to use to highlight objectives. Also, this was a kind of a social work practice and a human rights law, and I felt that I should include a table to make the representation better. So I've included two tables in this research paper. A lot of legal researchers do not use tables, so I would suggest you mostly do not use tables. Also, let us finally go on to the recommendations. Okay, let us try and understand how you should write recommendations of what study, and let us take this as an example. Okay, the study recommends strict implementation of the Karnataka Shops and Commercial Establishment Acts. Also, in furtherance of that, there is the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act of 2008, which is applicable throughout the country of India, and it is also applicable to these head road workers. Okay, so you are telling that both these need to be properly implemented. You are further telling that bringing a new act into effect, which was drafted and you saw it in Annexure 2. Then schemes must be introduced by the government for making things better for these headload workers. Schemes formed must be rigorously implemented. Also based on the identity cards which we saw earlier. So maybe you can say that most of them have a voter ID card. Postal ballots could be provided to interstate migrant workers because they have come out of their states. Let's say that person was from Tamil Nadu. Maybe postal ballots for those people can be arranged in the state of Karnataka during their elections. Some things may not particularly be practically possible, but I suggest you to give such uh, recommendations which are actually practically possible. All the head road workers with must be provided with identity cards for these schemes which was talked about earlier. And finally, coming to the conclusion that the act has not been properly implemented at this point, and there are many workers who work more than 10 hours a day, and you must ensure proper applicability of the acts. Further, talking about the Kerala and Maharashtra acts which exist, and there is a need for such an act to be implemented in Karnataka as well. So this was a gist of how you can write your research paper. It's a very quantitative research paper. I'm open to questions now, and I think that's it from my side. Any questions you have?
Sir, I have a question related to blog.
All right.
Sir, in some instances, I have stated the laws and I have provided the footnotes as well, but still it's catching plagiarism.
Can you repeat that question? Are you trying to, just remove the plagiarism? I mean, I didn't understand the complete aspect of what you're trying to do.
Sir, I have given some laws. I have stated some laws, and
Okay.
I have provided with footnotes, but still
Okay.
it's catching plagiarism despite of providing the footnotes.
Okay. So when you are trying to, put out laws onto your research paper, please do, properly paraphrase them. Obviously, it is very much understood that you have not written that law. That law has come into existence by the legislators or maybe by the rulings of the court. But try and properly paraphrase it so that you can put it on your research paper, even if it's a law. If you're putting in double quotes, it's completely fine, and obviously it will show plagiarism. But please ensure that you properly cite all the data you have taken from somewhere else. As long as you have properly cited other organizations, I mean, while check it on Turnitin, there are several layers which are properly put. So if that person who's doing the plagiarism check can see how to identify the layer which has to be removed, the plagiarism will actually not show.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, any further questions? Yeah.
So, since I'm not in law school yet, and I know that the other interns here have access to um, like files and articles that I don't, could you let me know if you could tell me a couple of sources that I can go to that I I can use for research? Because right now I'm only relying on Google because I'm not in law
All right.
school yet.
One of the main things which many people do use is Google Scholar. Instead of just doing a normal Google search, always start your research from Google Scholar.
All right.
I have also seen that many people, research on Indian Kanun. Please don't do that. Try and rely on websites like Manupatra, SEC Online. I mean, I've seen people say that, uh, पहले का जस्ट छोटा रिसर्च इंडियन कानून से कर लेते हैं, फिर विल कॉपी पेस्ट दिस ऑन मनुपात्रा, फिर वो जजमेंट आ जाएगा, उस उधर से कंटिन्यू करते हैं. So it does not work like this. Please, when you are searching for it, directly use proper keywords to use it on Manupatra, SEC Online, Heen Online, and other sources.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I also have a question regarding the blog.
Okay.
So I have been allotted to write the blog on the nervous action as a cause of action in thoughts. Sir,
Okay.
while doing the research in Heen Online, it was written. It was given as nervous shock could be only because of spoken words, and in another website such as Manupatra, it was given as it could arise from assault batteries. So, sir, does it contain both the element, or should I limit myself to only one of the topic?
So try and understand which definition of this nervous shock has come out later into existence. So if you try and see that there were judgments which were given in 1980, but there is another new judgment on nervous shock which was given in 2020 or say 2021. So obviously the 2021 concept of nervous shock is the latest one. That is what you must understand and implement in the present scenario. Obviously you cannot use the 1980s definition of nervous shock at the present time.
Thank you so
So
much,
try
sir.
and see which is the definition at the latest point of time.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any more questions? I think I'll take one last question.
Sir,
Yeah.
if I have to write an article on a supposed global legal principle like a statute, then how am I supposed to write my opinion on it? For example, like damnum sine injuria.
Okay, so when you're writing something on a very generic topic, let's see, let's say that these are already theories which have evolved and they exist from time immemorial, and you try and give your own opinion on it. So this is an opinionated based research paper. Try and rely on case laws. Try to see foreign case laws. Try to see Indian case laws. Try to establish a connection between them, and then finally come out with your conclusions telling that this was implemented in this cases and in this year. Please also do mention the years, because obviously law is very evolving, it changes from time to time. So I think that question is answered. You want to ask any follow-up question to that?
No, sir. Thank you.
Any more questions, or with this we'll end? Any question?
Sir, I do have a question.
Yeah.
In my blog, I just followed like a non-doctrinal issue. Like I didn't rely much on the statutes. Like I didn't
Okay.
copy paste it. So I just made the own constitutional law in my own words and my understanding. Is it okay, sir?
Yeah, like I said, you're supposed to paraphrase it, but cite, give proper references, citations to the relevant material. If you have cited
Yeah,
constitutional law, please do put it as
yeah,
constitution.
sir. That is my question. Like I just rephrased it. Yeah, I'll be citing the constitution, but other than that constitution, I don't have any footnotes because completely it's on my own words and my own understanding. So I don't have much footnotes to be
Yeah, as but if
included.
you say that it's completely in your own words, I mean, unless you have not relied on anything else. I mean, see, you may have relied on some sources to get some idea about it, put them as references, but if you have not, then it's completely fine. If it's starting as a first person, so you say that I as a researcher found this and this is what I have to say about it. So if it's in the first person sense, only then you can say about it. Also, one more very important point about a research paper or a research report which you're writing: always write it in the past tense, because while you're writing a research report or a paper, you have already completed your research. It's not ongoing. So So always write it in the past tense.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, one last question. I just wanted to know if the PPT that was shared, that was presented, will be shared
Yeah, I
so
will
that.
share that on the group.
Thank
I
you
think
so
I'll
much.
also share a few supplementary material which may be of use for you.
Thanks again.
No issues. Anything else?
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, actually. So my topic is defenses for negligence. I cannot find anything, in my blog to write a history on it. I cannot find anything relevant there.
Yeah, so like I said, researcher, it completely depends on researcher, what is there, what is the available material. So try and, write something of your own opinion after you have written the defenses. Obviously, you cannot change the defenses which are already existing. Try and
Yeah,
write
yeah.
your opinion of, say this defense must or must not have been included. Say, give reasons, refer to judgments, give your dissenting opinion on those judgments.
Yeah, sir. Sir, I'm talking about the history part in my
Yeah,
blog,
you can
actually.
skip that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, no issues.
Excuse me, sir. Just a
Yeah.
small clarification. When it comes to having recommendations in the research report, should it be
Hmm.
brief or should it be more in detail? For instance, if I say that I have to set up a committee, should I include what the committee is going to do and the composition of the committee? How detailed has to
So,
be? Yeah.
like I already said, it depends on the paucity of time of the researchers. Say you have 2 3 months for it, and like I already said, there are research and policy centers which want complete recommendations. They want how the committee must be set up, who it must consist of. Let's say there is a sexual harassment at workplace. They say that you must constitute a internal complaints committee in which one person must be the senior most lady who exists in the organization. So it completely is based on the researcher, what type of research is being conducted, for what purpose the research is being conducted. If you're doing an empirical study for the purpose of your college, university, you may not be required to give recommendations which are actually so vast, varied. But if you're working with the policy center, they will actually expect you to give proper recommendations as to how the committee must be set up, what it must constitute of, when it must be constituted, must there be elections every year to constitute the same board every year. Any follow-up questions to that, or was it answered?
Yeah, understood. Thank you so much.
No issues. Any other? All right. If there are no questions, we all may leave. I'll be here till the last person leaves. And thank you so much. Have a